tons of the Legacy Opens down. Actually, by tons, I should say a first and a second and a first.
A descendant of the Canadian threshold decks from years past.
That is an excellent, excellent description. I appreciate that's good.
Yeah. Here he has the 4 stifles. His permission suite is 3 snares, 3 dazes, 4 force of wills. Force of Will is actually a card, oddly enough, that's starting to fluctuate in numbers in people's deck lists. For a very long time, it's just been taken as a format staple, and now I think certainly after the Grand Prix win earlier this year, with the no Force of Will deck, and the fact that many people have sort of written and discussed the fact that it's not good in every matchup, it's certainly not a sacred cow by any stretch of the imagination. Those numbers fluctuate, but for the LA metagame, certainly if last year was any indicator, you want to be packing as many Force of Wills as possible, because the locals do like their combo decks.
And, you know, another thing, too, is that a lot of the reason for that dial back of Force of Will was the printing of a now-banned card, Mental Misstep.
Yes.
And I think with the banning of Mental Misstep, Force of Will in Wayne is definitely not as easy a decision. We can actually see, it must be one of Jason's friends behind him. Jason wearing the Mario shirt. I think I see Luigi behind him. Am I right?
Yes.
There we go. Oh.
That's how you know they are friends.
I'm pretty confident that they chose their outfits together. Always a plus at a Magic tournament.
That would be a weird coincidence, right? All right, and I'll cast Gataxian Probe.
You were talking earlier about how you almost wanted to shove this into all of your standard decks.
Yeah, I'm sort of at the point where I feel like this should just be in close to everything. So it looks like we're looking at a Daze, a Click, an Elspeth, 3 lands. Is that a Mutavault, Tundra, and a Flooded Strand?
Elspeth making Brian Kibler's ears twitch.
Yep.
Far, far away from here.
Yep. Yeah, I've been definitely having the experience where the card has been so good that I have often forgotten to draw off of it.
We have a question from Tiffany on Twitter. Are we brothers?
From another mother, yes. Not actually, not actually hereditary. I mean, I assume we're related in some great, you know, in the manner in which we are all related.
It's true.
But no, we are not. We are not directly related, to my knowledge.
This is true. I mean, he's definitely that other mother style, so right, it's all good.
Yeah. So one of the better cards in the format to see off of a Gataxian Probe is Daze. Now with the full information, he can decide how he wants to operate around this. I think it's worth running your Delver out there. If he wants to Daze, that's fine. And then next turn he has Snapcaster into his Gataxian Probe again, so he can start applying pressure and drawing some cards. Yep. Looks like David just drew Stoneforge Mystic, and so he just replays his island and passes the turn. I think Gataxian Probe Snapcaster is also just such an awesome inclusion for any sort of like aggressively angled deck, because you just want to have the option to fire him out on turn 2 and start getting things running. So he sees that there's been a Stoneforge Mystic drawn.
And I mean, Silvergill Adept, there's a reason it's one of the very few non-lords in Merfolk. The 2-mana bear plus draw card is worth it. And even if you're not getting that effect in the same way without losing life, the life is worth it.
Yes, for sure. And there's so many like weird reactive cards in Legacy and soft counters. Like the information is so good because knowing about the Dazes and Spell Pierces the world just allows you to play a very efficient game.
Second turn, Stoneforge Mystic gets dazed. I wouldn't be surprised by Wasteland coming down or being activated.
Especially now that he just drew Delver of Secrets, so he can Wasteland and play his Delver, which is an awesome turn.
This is one of the ways that this really harkens back to that Canadian Threshold style is we also have Stifle in Jason Abong's deck, so we got the Wasteland Stifle action.
This turn is awesome, especially knowing that his hand is so jammed up with expensive cards.
The word on the street from various people who are Arizona players, Jason Abong and the guy behind him, I don't have that guy's name. Apparently, they're twin brothers.
Oh, okay.
And Delver. It's an attempt at a flip.
Secrets.
Days. Another Delver in Jason's hand. In for 5.
This is a mighty fine draw.
I would not want to be in David Nguyen's seat right now. Oh boy, another wasteland. Another secret. How do you feel about our secrets here, David?
And the wasteland's especially rough here because he's kind of taxed on colored mana as well as a sheer amount of mana as well.
Absolutely.
Like he wants to be able to cast Click and Elspeth, so it's very hard to fetch a basic here, but he doesn't really have much else of a choice.
Batterskull naturally drawn by David Nguyen. For those of you who are just joining us, I'm Adrian Sullivan. I'm joined in the booth by Patrick Sullivan. This is round 5 of the Legacy Open for Star City Games here in Los Angeles. You can see on your right Jason Abong. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but I'm going to guess. Another Delver. What was the card? I can't quite see what that is.
Gitaxian Probe he just drew.
Gitaxian Probe. One of my favorite cards to get with a Delver.
Yeah.
In Legacy, I prefer to get Brainstorm, but that's just because we can up the power levels a little bit.
So I don't know if that land is a Mutavault or a Wasteland. Like, it's some promo. I think it's some promo. Does he even have Wasteland in his list? He has both cards, so
yeah.
I can't identify that art.
Promo art is one of my big eyeball weaknesses. I'm never quite sure what it is. It's Jason and Jeff, for those of you who are curious. If you're in Arizona or otherwise a Pacific area player, Southwest player. Snapcaster draws... pardon me, what is that he just cast there?
Snapcaster to block.
There we go. Snapcaster eats a Snapcaster.
You know the closest clear on his Snapcaster, so he can just Snapcaster Probe again. Or, yeah, he can Snapcaster Probe again.
Show me your hand, please. Here it is.
It's the same one from...
Hey, you remember it?
Yep.
And I still can't tell what that promo card is.
He just drew a Misty Rainforest, which is awesome because now he can.
Wasteland is apparently what that card probably is. That's our most likely call at this point. Mutavault. What's that?
I think it's Wasteland, but
Okay, promo Wasteland is our what we're being told. As soon as we get a full confirmation, one way or the other, we'll let you know. Main phase Vendilion Click. I really like this play from David Nguyen. One of the things that you don't want to do is just wait, because you can. Sometimes end of your turnitis will kill you.
Yep.
Wasteland, it's confirmed. He reveals his own Elspeth from the Vendilion Click trigger. Buries it. That's a lot of mana and a lot of white mana.
Yeah, and it's also just going to instantly die from the Insect Aberration. So he's got to find something better than that.
5 power can get through it, even if it gets no help.
The issue is he's taking a huge shot this turn, and with Lightning Bolt in his hand and Lethal coming across next turn, I don't really know how.
After combat, he lays a Misty Rainforest.
Yeah, I think he's just going to get Bolt here and kill him. Go get a Volcanic and...
In this matchup, we can see the clear archetype differences. Rug Delver obviously presenting itself as an aggro control threat here.
Yeah.
And blue-white Stoneblade. Stoneblade just essentially setting itself up as it's the control deck in this matchup, and it doesn't really want to be. Bolt for the win. Any answers?
I think he's going to cast his
Brainstorm, looking for a Force of Will?
Looking for, like, Black Lotus, Ancestral Recall, the Almost Will or something.
Yeah, something like that would probably help. And
all right, so game 1 to the Delver Rug deck.
Things get even better, I think, after they board. Pyroblast, one of the best sideboard cards in the history of Magic,
Yep.
is available. And if he wants it, Spell Pierce as well.
Yeah, on the other side of the table, we have 3 copies of Path's Exile that seem quite good. Jason actually does have 1 basic in his list, which you saw, the 1 basic island, so he does have something to go get, but Path still totally legitimate. And then he has an Engineer Explosive, a Pierce, Wrath of Gods, Flusterstorms, all of which are of lesser utility, but could be brought in.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with Wrath of God in a deck that's playing, against a deck that's playing Counter Magic, by the time you get to your 4 mana, it might be at a point where they just say no.
Right.
In terms of creatures, the creatures that a Stoneblade deck presents, they tend to be pretty small and incidental. The
Yeah.
real issue is the Batterskull.
Yeah.
And you essentially what you're going to be trying to bank on is just the sheer power of your cards overwhelming your opponent given enough time.
Yeah.
And in that case, I would not be surprised to see, Jason relying only on his lightning bolts and just eschewing the dismembers, because there aren't going to be very many creatures that David Nguyen is going to be casting, and he's got to cast them through things like Spell Snare.
Yeah, Dismember is mostly in these main decks as a concession to opposing Tarmogoyfs and Neither Reliquaries. In the absence of those cards, your other removal spells are better.
Yeah,
he still
I mean,
may decide that he wants as much removal as possible.
Absolutely. Dismember can also can stall a germ.
Yeah.
A big germ does die to Dismember.
Yeah. So it's some utility. It's not one of the better cards in the deck, though. I would honestly not be surprised to see Force of Will cut. That's just not the way the game gets played. He
can use Pyroblast as his Force of Will-like card.
Right.
In a lot of cases. He can't stop a Stoneforge Mystic, but he already has Spell Snare, and he's able to spend only 1 mana for a cheap counterspell fight then.
Right, and this matchup is much more closer just sort of conventional Magic, and Force of Will is the more, conventional / ABC the decks are, the weaker Force of Will gets. So I would be an advocate of actually cutting the card from both sides of the table.
One of the reasons that is there is an actual extra cost to Force of Will that matters. Losing a card is a real thing.
Yeah, it is.
And when the games are not going to be suddenly over on turn 2 because of an explosion of some sort of flurry of cards, a card like Force of Will does have a diminished utility.
Right. It's like, how high would you take Force of Will in a booster draft? It's like probably would not make the cut a lot of the time. And the more that games kind of resemble booster draft games, obviously these decks are at a much higher power level, but it's just attacking with good creatures and using kill spells and whatever. When that's the case, then the card becomes less and less attractive.
Yeah, I really like that analysis, actually, the closer you get to a booster draft. And obviously, like you said, we are far and above in the power level from this. But one of the things that's really interesting about that, is just from a perspective that I've always brought to the game, is if you play numerous formats, you will find strange things that you learn from one that apply to another.
Yes.
And I think that's a really great example of that kind of lesson keeping that you can bring from one to another.
Something that the presence of Grim Lavamancer in Jason's deck also changes this matchup around dramatically. It really hamstrings David's ability to get much going. He has 1 Geist of St. Traff, which has kind of become a staple at this point. But other than that, all of his threats are just colded by Lavamancer. So that threat there is a huge potential shifter in how the matchup plays out. Where did Luigi go? They're like they're like a pair, right? So
apparently his twin brother Jeff has walked off.
Why do they have like the same style shirt too? Is just like it's just
I feel like it's almost like a Double Mint gum commercial.
Yeah, it's just too good. It's too good.
Do you have a vote for your favorite Mario game of all time?
Mario Brothers 3.
Okay.
Just the best.
Super Mario 64. And we have an island versus a tropical island.
It looks like that's the only land in Jason's hand, if I can tell. He's kept the...
He still has Force of Will in his hand.
Oh no, he had a second land, I'm sorry, because he drew Delver this turn.
Delver is in his hand, lays a Scalding Tarn, cracks it. And we've got a volcanic island.
Yep. Those two dual lands start a lot of games of Legacy.
Both players have access to Wasteland. The Stoneblade deck has 3, and the Rug Delver has 4.
Yeah, I actually was struggling with my colored mana a surprising amount of time when I was working on playing various Rug decks. The colored mana is not a free roll, that's for sure.
There's a Delver. It's one of those things, actually, you wish you could go fetch out a Taiga, but putting a Taiga in your list really just hurts you in so many other ways.
Right.
Stifle on the fetch.
Yeah, the fetch land is going to be matched by a Pierce.
He wants that Stifle to not resolve.
Yep.
He wants the land. If you've never stifled a fetch land, there's just a really lovely feeling about doing that. So I highly recommend it at some point in your life.
It is it's one of those things. Sort of, for me, it's a negative. Like, I know it's more miserable for my opponent than it is fun for me. But you and I kind of have different feelings about the Stone Rains.
I love Stone Rains. It's true. Plains and Island, making David Nguyen's board not particularly susceptible to the 4 Wastelands from Jason Abong. Swords to Plowshares on Delver. Life gain, not something that David Nguyen has particularly cared about from his opponent, so that's a good one. Grim Lavamancer, that's the real Grim.
There's our boy. It's possible Jason feels like compelled to keep Force of Will in his deck just because the Planeswalkers from David are so devastating. Elspeth especially. But I'm pretty surprised to see them in Dave's list after board. Like, Jason's deck doesn't have any really individually powerful cards. It's sort of the total sum of what's going on that makes that deck good.
He could just be trying to stop a fight on turn 1 for a Delver. You know, like, he feels like that initial fight is so big. It's the equivalent, really, of a Vapor Snare in a control deck, right? Against a Delver in the Standard.
Yeah.
Net loss of 1 card, but just trying to buy the time.
I don't know why he fired off the Brainstorm there. I don't know what he's looking to find exactly. Like, he already has Force of Will in hand.
Right.
So he's not digging for Force of Will because he had that option afforded to him already. So I'm not sure exactly what he was looking for.
How do you feel about that particular Brainstorm he cast?
I'm not a big fan. Like, I would only want to fire... Like, it looks like this game is going to go on for a very long time right now.
Mm-hmm.
And since he's not really looking for anything in particular to protect his Lavamancer because he had Force of Will and just let it go, you might as well just take your time. Like,
yeah.
There's no rush, and you can make the card significantly better if you wait until you flood it out, or you have, you know, maybe some dazes or pierces or stifles or whatever, and the time for them has gone, you know.
Jason goes Delver, both resolve, back to David Nguyen.
And because of that Brainstorm, David should be pretty certain that there's an instant on top of the deck, so they should both be flipping. We have an Explosives for 1, and that's going to be answered with a Force of Will. I assume David's going to force back. The one argument I can see for using the Brainstorm in the spot that he used it is if he wanted to make sure, if he knew that he wanted to play the 2 Delvers the following turn, to basically use his mana that turn, engineering, making sure an instant's on top of his deck, and then being able to have both of his mana freed up on this turn. But the engineered explosives put a wrench to that. Like, if he already has Tarmogoyf, and he knows that he wants to spend his 2 mana this turn casting it, then that's an argument for using your 1 spare mana that way to make sure both of your Delvers are flipped the following turn, and then you can cast your Goyf the turn after. So that's a possible rationalization.
We saw this fight here. Both players cast Force of Will, fighting over Engineered Explosives. Engineered Explosives blows up after the resolution to destroy 2 Delvers, and now Tarmogoyf is instant creature, artifact, land. I believe 4/5. I don't think we have any sorceries in the yard. There might be a Gitaxian Probe, but I don't remember if I saw one.
I don't think so, because that's a card I remember because people's hands get flipped over and you're looking at stuff.
So either 4 or 5, most likely. Small chance of 5/6. Pretty good for 2 mana. Life totals here should be, I believe, 1916, or maybe it's 1917.
He has a Path to Exile, which actually...
And Jason does have the basic, a single basic. This single basic is almost certainly more for fighting opposing wastelands, but it's still useful in this case.
Yeah, I mean, I tried pretty hard to cram an island into my red, blue, green deck and part of the rationalization was Path to Exile. But once I decided to goose up, then Path is just not...
The goose?
Yeah.
Oh, the goose.
Once you're on that path, then you don't really need to worry about Path to Exile very much.
Jason says go. And now the corner has been turned for David Nguyen. He has not won the game by any stretch of the imagination, but he's no longer in a position where he's trying to recover from the aggression that Jason's putting out.
Waiting for a fourth land.
We see a third land now from Jason. This actually gives Jason access to all the colors of mana in his deck, but he still casts nothing. Main phase Brainstorm, I believe.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on. Again, this is another Brainstorm where it's like, nothing's happening. So, why are we jumping the gun here?
I actually depend on he doesn't lay the fetch land. He did get a fetch land from that Brainstorm.
Well, he's probably thinking about, I guess, Stifle is on his radar.
I don't mind main phase Brainstorm if you're playing against a non... actually, I like main phase Brainstorm if you're playing against a non-Stifle deck. If you've got any number of cards in your hand that are not particularly great, pushing that actually is pretty reasonable given the other cards you have in your deck that can help you get new cards and the power levels of the cards you can draw.
Yeah, it's more of an issue of like, the card just gets better the longer you wait. So as long as your opponent's not putting you in a position where you need to fire it off to dig for something, I'm in favor of just kind of chilling. Because eventually you're going to draw you're potentially going to draw dead cards, or you're going to start flooding out, or whatever the case, and then you can really maximize the card's power.
Snapcaster casts another Brainstorm. This is at the end of the turn, revealing a Brainstorm, a Snapcaster, and I believe a Volcanic Island. A couple of cards go back. One of them looks like a Spell Snare, perhaps. And draw. Pyroblast?
I think that's a Bolt.
Okay. In for 2. Not a huge attacker, but an attacker nonetheless. 5 mana. Can hardcast the Force of Will in his hand. Looks like that's a go. End of turn Brainstorm, I don't like this at all. This Brainstorm I don't like at all.
Yeah. Again, so it's all the same arguments. Just why are we in a rush here?
And he basically played that like an instant ponder without a shuffle.
Yeah.
In for 2. Lays a Tarmogoyf. Hardcast Force of Will. We gonna see a Daze here? Nope.
Yep. See, this is the Force of Wills. I feel like for both players have been underperforming in this game because we're on turn 20 or whatever it is, and no one's cast anything particularly good yet.
Stoneforge Mystic draws a Spell Snare.
Ugh.
Bolt Snapcaster in hand. Maybe Bolt Snapcaster, actually.
Well, he put 2 bolts back on top from the Brainstorm, so the top card of his deck should be a Lightning Bolt.
I see Bolt Snapcaster something. Oh, wow. What
Nugget. Nugget.
Is the game that close to ending?
Well, you could go... It might be, because he goes Bolt you to 10. Or 9 if he's fetching.
Well, he seems pretty fetching.
What's up? Oh yeah, sure. So you bolt him, attack to 9 to 7.
Right.
Snapcaster bolt end of turn 4. Both Snapcasters are lethal.
That seems to be asking for a lot of nothing from your opponent.
I mean, it's pretty clear his opponent has nothing.
There's draw phases. I feel like with a deck that is aggro control, you don't necessarily have to shift into pure aggro mode unless you're, you know, it's a different mindset.
Yeah, I mean it's jumping the gun, but the clock actually adds up.
Oh, I agree. I think in this situation, I think it might be one turn sooner than he should have. Here we go as a Jace. Does that resolve?
So if we're on this plan already, I would just Snapcaster Bolt right now.
I would wait for him to activate the Brainstorm ability and then Snapcaster Bolt. Find out wait for him to activate a Jace ability.
Sure,
yeah.
Right.
See what mode happens and then go from there. Now respond. Don't let him Brainstorm. There we go. Bolt you.
Bolt Jace. He drew a Plow, which helps.
Looks like a Spell Snare in David Nguyen's hand. End of the turn, we're going to see Spell Snare. Boom.
Yeah, so actually now...
No clock. No Bolt in hand. Spell Pierce, which is a little bit bad against 6 mana.
Yeah, he can even cast his Jaces and stuff now.
Spell Pierce, Spell Snare, I think?
He has Pierce and Snare, yeah.
And Fetch Land.
Just drew a Bolt.
End of the turn, click. Well, that's going to work.
I mean, he's gonna... Did he go to the Nugget?
He went for the Dome.
Wow. You just let him keep that, right?
Yeah, I think so. That was a Scalding Tarn, Spell Pierce, Spell Snare. Draw.
To Ponder.
Ponder. Fishy Ponder. Your preferred Ponder, it sounded like.
Yeah.
Force of Will, Stifle, Brainstorm. Shuffle, Shuffle, Shuffle.
No, because he has the Tarn.
He has the Tarn. You're right. Yeah. I forgot about the Tarn in his hand. Thank you.
He's firing it off right now.
I had forgotten his Tarn.
So is he just looking for a redraw, I guess? The way he's been playing, I assume that he's just going to Brainstorm right now and try to find a Tarmogoyf or some gas to try to finish the game off.
I think he should cast main phase Brainstorm here. Just look for something immediately. Hope it works. Main phase Brainstorm, yep. That's Pyroblast, Tarmogoyf, Wasteland.
Good set of spells. Play your Goyf with Pyro backup. It's not bad.
Goyf. Any counters there? I don't know if he has anything. And the turn Plow. Oh.
Yeah.
Well, more life. That was a path, actually. And he gets a nice shuffle. Does not forget his shuffle. Those top cards were not exciting for him. In again, once more with the Vendilion click. Spell Pierce, Pyroblast, go. Some other card in his hand, I can't tell what it is. In for 3. Ponder. Fishy, fishy Ponder. Pyro.
Some card that looks like Goblin Arsonist that I can't identify. A Grudge. That's probably a Grudge. It would stand to reason he would bring those in.
Fishy Ponder. What you gonna find? Fishy Ponder finds Wasteland.
I'm kind of an advocate of. I probably would have just Wastelanded on that turn. Just because with all the cantripping, you actually don't know. It's weird. Like your soft counters can actually come up on these turns because people can be pondering and brainstorming into spells. Yep. So if you know you're going to do it anyway, I prefer just to not let them go into their turn with that mana. Even if, I've been surprised, even when it looks like it's not going to matter, it has come up before.
Pyroblast. He's tired of losing life to that guy. David Nguyen 4, Jason Abong 11. Kills a white source. That leaves down 5 mana. Elspeth or Jace can now be spell pierced.
Yep.
And there's the 6th mana. Never mind. Force of Will.
Yeah. Part of the issue with that, using the Wasteland there, it means he can no longer hard cast Force of Wills.
4 mana. I see a Pyroblast here. Jace Pyroblasted. Snapcaster.
Yeah.
Finally drawn. This could be an end of turn Snapcaster Bolt. Batterskull, I believe, was just drawn by David Nguyen. And he answers to this one.
Well, this is actually awesome because he can pierce it, make him crack his fetch lands, and then Snapcaster for Bolt kills him.
Does he see this play? Here we go. I think he sees it. Spell Pierce. Fetch, fetch.
Now he's trying to,
He doesn't even have to think about Snapcaster. He just has to think about Bolt here. Going to 3 life. Rough beats.
Right. But it's like, what happens if he has Bolt in his hand? Can I possibly win this game? It's got to be part of the thought process here.
Absolutely. He's thinking. Maybe looking at his opponent. Trying to get a read before he does it. And goes to 2. Is Jason going to stop him there?
I don't think you want to stop him here because he could potentially have days. So if he's tapping out, you might as well just go to your main phase so you have an extra mana and not have to worry about days.
That is absolutely true. I didn't think about that. Good call. David Nguyen reveals a tropical island for a moment there before finally settling on a tundra.
Like I think Jason actually also has a chance to draw a blue spell, so he has Force of Will backup and not have to care about days. So it's basically just the lock at that point.
He's looking through Jason Abong's graveyard right now and removed from game pile. I think that's just the graveyard. Just trying to get a sense of what kind of cards Jason can, have access to. Batterskull still on the stack.
Seems weird to do that after you've committed to using your fetch lands, unfortunately.
You can see David Nguyen in thought. Over on the other side of the table, Jason Abong. And Jeff Abong behind him, his brother.
All right, so that's...
And he goes for it right now.
Yeah. Okay, and that's the concession. All right. So Jason Abong wins 2-0.
I think that's a fairly unsurprising match result.
Yeah, I like I said, I'm never a fan when there's 2 decks and both of them sort of attack. One of them has a super clean clock and is more threat dense, etc., etc. The one that's a little more fiddly, I'm usually not as big of a fan of.
Well, one of the things that